Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10, What is New and Changing, presented by Senior Learning Architect at Red Hat, Rob Locke. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I'll be assisting and moderating our session today. We are in Zoom for today's webinar, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you in an email after the session. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use the chat or that Q&A option for our short Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Rob.
Thank you so much, Mariella. As she said, my name is Rob Locke. I'm a senior learning architect with the Red Hat Training and Certification Division within Red Hat. I've been with this training and certification division now for a little over 20 years. Started as an instructor. I've been a curriculum developer, an exam developer, also was a chief lab architect for a while. And now, as an architect, I help folks sort of craft their learning journeys. What sort of tailored or custom content do they need in order to be successful with the portfolio that Red Hat offers? Joining me today, you may see him pop up in the Q&A or some of the chat windows, is my cohort, Wes Urquhart. Wes is also a learning architect with the Training and Certification Division, and so he'll be there sort of in the background helping out. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10, which was officially announced just a couple of weeks ago at our annual user conference, Red Hat Summit. But of course, in order for us to understand Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10, it would be helpful for us to understand how we got here. There's over a quarter century of innovation that we've done in RHEL that can be broken into three big periods of innovation. The first period was around Unix to Linux migrations, right? Unix parity, competing with Solaris, competing with HPUX. RHEL grew healthily in those early days by doing a lot of those Unix to Linux migrations. And it was during that period that we introduced our first version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, version 2.1, in 2002, just before I got my Red Hat certified engineer in 2003. The next period that you see here on the timeline was really around cloud and virtualization. This was about technologies getting into the Linux kernel and then ultimately getting into containers. So you see the addition on the timeline there of KVM virtualization, which we first introduced in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 5.4 in 2009, which has ostensibly replaced the original Xen virtualization architecture that we had available. And then we added containers, which is really making a big splash in RHEL 10, but we initially added those as application service containers in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 back in 2014. So where are we today and where are we going forward to? So finally, when we look into the future and where we're heading, we're really trying to tackle that era of artificial intelligence, frankly, like pretty much everyone else in the technology industry right now. But I do think we're uniquely positioned to really help in this space, and we'll see a little bit about how that's done. Now, Red Hat is a very established and mature platform. We've got a huge number of hardware and software vendors. We've got cloud provider integrations. Frankly, we've achieved a really strong penetration in a bunch of different verticals, including telecom, banking, retail, so on. RHEL is a really trusted platform. So that gives us a strong foundation going into version 10. But we also have to contend with how the market is changing, including perennial market forces, as well as some new ones. So Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10 addresses these market forces. One consistent or constant market force is tighter resource constraints. Infrastructure teams have less money, struggle with talent shortages, and are usually understaffed to effectively manage a platform. This has always been a cost sensitive area. Historically, Red Hat Enterprise Linux has tackled this problem well by offering platform standardization and stability with support across the ecosystem. But we are also trying new and innovative approaches. The second one, accelerated cloud adoption, is another driving force. The cloud is not as buzzy as it used to be, especially with the rise of AI, but it's still a central issue for a lot of our customers. To address this, we're making some fundamental changes to the operating system to tackle this. That's why we're introducing cloud optimized Red Hat Enterprise Linux offerings to provide ready to run experience so you can deploy faster. But we've also got some other things in that realm too that we'll see coming up. Security threats is another perennial issue, and quantum computers are posing a new high risk threat. The rise of those quantum computers is going to impact everything. So we've started proactively preparing our platform even before there's wider awareness across our customer base. We'll take a closer look at that one too. And then finally, it's all about AI, right? Unless you've been under a rock for the last couple of years, this is taking off like crazy. In particular, generative AI is gaining serious traction, and we've got some cool new features coming down the pipe in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10 to make Red Hat's mark in this space and actually build a platform that makes it utilizable for our customers. So ultimately, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10 will help you to address the Linux skills gap. We know that hiring system admins and system architects is tough, and attracting and retaining that talent once you have them is even harder. We're adding capabilities in RHEL to make things more efficient for existing experts, as well as simplifying operations for new talent that's in training. Second, we're going to help you contain drift and accelerate delivery, focusing on transforming the current patching process as we know it today. Currently, patching is a process marred with traps and dangers, and we're moving to a new methodology that focuses on rebuilding an image and then repaving the infrastructure instead of just patching in place. I'm thinking about all the road work outside my house at the moment. Third, we want to help system administrators and architects make better decisions at build time. We know from talking to customers that RHEL is a very stable platform for day two operations. Red Hat Enterprise Linux can run for 1, 2, 5, 10, 15 years efficiently. But there's a lot of front-loaded work that goes into planning new versions and the upgrade process. Even changes that appear very small are like icebergs. There's a lot hidden under the water that goes into making updates. We want to make that iceberg smaller by providing better information and better tooling in the OS and let you see under the water. Fourth, we're resisting security attacks in a rapidly changing environment. The post-quantum world holds a lot of threats to the current set of cryptography, in addition to all the perennial security threats. We're investing heavily in this area, and we'll see some really cool stuff coming down the pipe. And then lastly, leverage Red Hat Enterprise Linux as a trusted AI foundation in both RHEL AI to develop, test, and run large language models, and OpenShift AI to scale and bring AI-enabled applications to production faster. So, the new marquee features that I want to step through and have us discuss today is image mode. This is a revolutionary new way to build and deploy RHEL. We're not taking away the old way, all right, but this may have you start thinking a little differently about your deployment model. Image mode was first introduced, honestly, in RHEL 9.4 as a tech preview. Well, now with Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10, it has come out of tech preview. The second thing I want to take a look at is the new RHEL Lightspeed command line assistant. This is a new way to get help right at the RHEL console, backed by decades of Red Hat expertise. Basically, AI in a bottle for you, so you can cut down on the man pages that we've all grown to love. Third, RHEL 10 is bringing a new initiative to help defend against the looming threat of quantum computing. And so we are supplying the tools you'll need to implement those post-quantum standards as they are approved. The standards aren't there yet, but they are coming. And we need to be ready for them, and we need to be planning for the transition. And fourth, we are bringing Insights Advisor to satellite. Customers have long asked for the ability to leverage that Insights capability on premises. So we're bringing Advisor to your data center. And we'll take a look at how that's happening. So I have my first poll question for you, and that should pop up on your screen. This first question is asking you, when was the first version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux released? Is it A, RHEL 7.2 in 2001? Is it B, RHEL 2.1 in 2002? Is it C, RHEL 1.0 in 1999? Or is it D, RHEL 0.9, the proverbial Halloween release in 1994? So take a few moments to choose which one you think this is. Oh my, it looks like I have fooled most of you. Okay, we'll go ahead and end that poll. And it looks like most of you chose Red Hat Enterprise Linux 1.0 in 1999. There was no such thing. In fact, out of all four listed here, that is the only one that never existed. Yes, there was a Red Hat Linux 7.2 in 2001, which provided the foundation for the first Red Hat Enterprise Linux release 2.1 in 2002. At the time, it was stated nobody ever wants a 1.0 release to be deployed, and so our first version was actually called 2.1 there in 2002. So the correct answer was in fact B. The final one there, Red Hat Linux 0.9, is in fact the very first Red Hat Linux release, known as the Halloween release, released on October 31st, 1994, and was version 0.9. All right, so let us go ahead and take a look at the changes to Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10. The first thing we wanted to take a look at doing, the first market force we wanted to take a look at, was addressing the Linux skills gap. How can we leverage the knowledge that Red Hat has and put it at your fingertips when you need it most? And so it's no secret that finding and retaining top Linux talent continues to be more and more challenging as the popularity of Linux continues to grow and support new technologies like clouds, edge devices, AI workloads, and more. There's just not enough Linux talent to go around, and this scarcity makes retention even more difficult. So we've been hard at work exploring new ways to use AI technologies in RHEL to help you simplify Linux tasks and amplify results. So in this release, we are introducing Red Hat Enterprise Linux Lightspeed. It combines the decades of Red Hat's Linux knowledge and expertise and helps to inform and simplify how you build, deploy, and manage RHEL. To be more specific, we have added a new RHEL command line assistant powered by RHEL Lightspeed to give users the ability to interact with RHEL by simply typing an English question directly on the command line to receive answers with recommendations and acceptable guidance. It really is that simple. And this gives your newer Linux administrators the ability to quickly perform more complex tasks, but it also gives veteran administrators the ability to do their work even faster. What we've done is we have taken the decades of data, whether that be the online resources that we provide in docs.redhat.com, coupled with the knowledge base articles, all of that information, and we have fed that into a generative AI. We needed to be able to make this knowledge more transparent and accessible to you so that it could provide proactive guidance as you're making decisions at build time. So here's an example. We're trying to use journal control in RHEL, which, to be honest with you, is a bit of a cryptic command with numerous sub-options. If you're not an experienced RHEL user and you're looking at this, it might seem all gibberish, and that's exactly the point. It's difficult to understand and master these commands. But if you can ask the system a question in English, that would make it a lot easier, right? So here we ran the C command, which stands for Command Line Assistant, asking it to help troubleshoot why SSHD is failing. And it returns a recommendation. So we might not even know how to tell why SSHD is failing, but the system now proactively guides us on what to do and helps us along. However, this still requires a human being in the loop because AI isn't foolproof. As a good comparison, you might look at the level 2 driver's assistance with a Tesla. You don't want to take your eyes off the road or your hands off the wheel, but it does make it a lot less stressful to troubleshoot unfamiliar problems. In this case, we see in the first red box, we're running C, help me troubleshoot SSHD failing to start. Of course, the AI assistant is very polite to us. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that you're having trouble with the SSHD service not starting. Here are some steps you can take to troubleshoot this issue. Step 1, check the status of the SSHD service by running a sudo system control status SSHD command. This will give you information about the current status of the service and any error messages that may have occurred. And then a second step, review the system logs for any relevant error messages. Well, there's the journal control command that will filter the output to just the SSHD service for you without you having to look that up and dissect a man page to make that happen. Whoops. I'll be honest with you, the place that was most interesting for me with the command line assistant is not only can I type C followed by a question, but I can also take the output from a command and pipe it to C with a question. So for example, I'm generating a bunch of output from, say, a PS command. And I don't remember what all the different columns are that are in that header. So I could take that PS command, pipe it to C, and say, help me interpret this output. Or help me understand what are the different headers? Different natural language questions that can step me through figuring out that information and using my live system, my live data to get those answers. Now, another area we're helping with the skills gap is that we continue to provide automation and management capabilities to automate those manual tasks, to standardize deployments at scale, and simplify the day-to-day administration of your system. RHEL Image Builder we'll take a look at a little bit later on, but I want to talk a little bit about Web Console and system roles. The web console, we can now use the new packageless sessions to functionally manage remote systems via the web console without having to install the cockpit packages on those remote hosts. We also have a new file browser capability giving us a text editor that can allow us from within that web console to edit configuration files. It also has improved Stratus support, and if you're using HA cluster management, there are new plugins for Cockpit to manage that. System roles have been expanded. If you haven't used system roles before, these are Ansible collections, Ansible capabilities that we can use directly on the systems. And so we've added system roles to support the deployment of AID, your advanced intrusion detection system. We've added roles to support Podman to better integrate and deploy and manage those containers on remote RHEL systems. And some systemd user level unit support has been added. All right. So those are some of the things we're doing in order to deal with the missing talent. The second area I want to focus on, and this is frankly where that image builder thing we mentioned is going to come into play. What can we do to contain drift and accelerate delivery? Well, RHEL 10 can help you address the challenges associated with drift, where your systems gradually deviate from your standardized settings and configurations, often due to work associated with manual troubleshooting and patching. Reality is consistency matters, and any deviations can create problems over time that can lead to system instability, increased security risks, and more. Patching, for example, often requires substantial planning, followed by execution in a designated maintenance window, the joy of 2 a.m. activities. During this process, it's not uncommon for most problems to be resolved right away, but Murphy happens. Some usually fail. And when this happens, you have to stop, figure out what's wrong, and resolve the problem, and then try the patch again. This can sometimes take hours, and the differences on those failed systems is what we call drift. Now, ideally, you want to minimize or contain drift, and image mode for RHEL is what's going to make that possible. By giving you the ability to lay the same gold image, which includes RHEL itself, across every server using a tool chain that we're becoming familiar with, container tools and technologies. And then when you want to make updates to those systems, instead of patching them individually, you simply switch all of your servers to the next identical image, just like you update your smartphone. Image mode not only helps you update your systems faster, but also gives you the ability to move to more robust tooling with CI/CD pipelines where you can actually test images in advance. Plus, there's less maintenance because you're constantly rolling out that perfect image everywhere. And you can now sign and cryptographically verify your images so you know exactly what is on your fleet of services. One customer explained it to us like this. There's pain all over the regulatory process over CVEs. If you're trying to figure out if you have a fleet of 1,000 servers and every one of those 1,000 servers is different and has drift, that's a really hard problem to solve. But if you're managing those 1,000 servers from a single image, now I just have to look at a single image and I know exactly what CVEs are patched. If I can have an image-based server, essentially I can shrink that image down and then know exactly what's inside of it. I can harden it. I can quickly turn it around and make changes. I can roll from point A to point B, but if something fails, I can also fail back to point A. If I reboot the 1,000 servers into point B and something doesn't work, like an application fails, I can roll back. It offers a cell phone-like, iPhone-like experience with the updates and rollbacks. As I said, this is a very powerful methodology change. When we look at the diagram on the far left, the loose files, or what we call package mode, are all over the place using RPMs. Compare that to the middle with image mode, where you can deploy the operating system as an image and you can deploy the application as an image on top. So now you have two images. One image deploys to the hardware or the virtual machine or the cloud environment, and then one image that deploys the application on top. Now you have this very modular, very tightly packaged, very controllable, and easy to manage fleet of servers that can run any application. But they're all packaged up in containers. And then the images themselves are all packaged up. On the back end, application programmers can update their apps whenever they want, and the system administrators and architects can update the infrastructure whenever they want without getting in each other's way. Our image-based methodology, called image mode for RHEL, is the exact same thing, but for operating system updates. You take all of the files that are in the operating system, package them up into a single image, and deploy across your fleet. We even now support the ability to create custom base images for image modes. You can now create a base image from particular RPM repositories and our customized RPM content that gets installed. You can even apply the same security hardening profiles like STIG, PCI, or CIS to those image mode containers, all wrapped together. Now, what does this look like? As I mentioned, it's the container tools that we're using. And so there on the left, you see an example of a container file with a couple little differences compared to those application containers you may have built before. First, you'll notice that the from line points to a boot C starting container. Boot C is the key to allowing us to deploy this in hardware, VMs, and into the cloud. We then decide what additional software dependencies we want to put in there. We can add an application, add the configuration files. We can run different configuration scripts. But the workflow ultimately for building a RHEL image mode system is really very similar to what you would expect from a standard application container. It's defined like a container. It's built like a container. It's stored in a registry, just like a container, and then deployed using the boot C tooling on the RHEL image mode host. And if we're doing that all just like containers, application containers, managing it is now engineered for modern GitOps and CI/CD workflows. You can fully drive and automate the systems via pipelines or scale control through your management platform of choice, whether that's Insight, Satellite, or Ansible. So you have that flexible choice of management, leveraging your preferred management system. And they've all been updated to support image mode. Red Hat Insights, the image mode systems can be scanned for security and operational recommendations and image updates. Red Hat Satellite 6.17 brings image mode support for your provisioning and client management, and it includes now a container registry. Ansible Automation Platform, we have the Community Boot C collection to simplify your client updates. All right. So that's how we can take a look at containing drift. But what we also want to do is help you to make better choices before you deploy, to make those choices at build time, where it's easier and cheaper to make those changes. We need to shift left as we're doing this. We need to be able to understand what's true about our environment that we're trying to create. So, as an example, wouldn't it be helpful to know if a Linux package you're about to add is no longer supported, or has a newer version, or is typically installed with other packages? Of course it would. And the sooner you know this information, the easier it is to make an informed choice and potentially avoid possible problems in production. So with this release, Insight's image builder users can now make smarter decisions at build time with the new ability to proactively receive package recommendations powered by that same RHEL Lightspeed, based on your selections of what you want included. You'll also now have access to new Insights planning capabilities, including future roadmap and package lifecycle information to help guide those early decisions. And if you prefer to use image mode for RHEL to build your gold image, you can now use pre-hardened images that we offer to minimize setup and configuration time. And you can create software bill of materials to easily prove a secure supply chain process. Insights is going to be even more powerful moving forward. Today, Insights provides information and advises customers what to do. But moving forward, we're adding new planning and server rollout features and new methodologies that are really going to change the way architects and system administrators plan out fleets of servers. So, architects and system administrators are planning for weeks to execute an update in 5 minutes at 2 a.m., right? To prepare, they're scouring Red Hat release notes, docs.redhat.com, knowledge base articles. They're Googling, reading blogs. Although a lot of this information is spread across the Red Hat site, they have to tie it all together and synthesize it themselves, especially as a lot of that information is about RHEL in general and not specific to what they're trying to build. This homework puts a large burden on the user to figure out what they need. So we want to package up and deliver the future roadmap information and the application lifecycle information as it applies specifically to your fleet of servers. So here's what the lifecycle information look like. We mocked up a fleet of 100 servers with varying software packages installed across the systems. From this view, you can see all of the software packages and where they are at in their life cycle. For example, there's a bunch of servers that are running Ruby 3.3, and they have a nice runway and lots of years of support ahead. But some servers on the first line there are running Node.js 16, and that's out of support. Our data tells us that a bunch of customers are running things out of support. Sometimes it might be on purpose, but sometimes it might be that they don't know. But now, by registering your entire fleet with insights, you can monitor what's in support and what's out of support in a single place without having to log in to every server and manually check the life cycle of each software package. We're empowering customers to make better decisions. And here's the RHEL roadmap. One of Red Hat's superpowers is all of our upstream open source contributors. We have product managers and engineers all contributing to upstream communities like Fedora and also contributing to new RHEL features. We know when we're going to deprecate hardware or get rid of a software package or add a new feature. It's all documented. But historically, that documentation has been really hard to find. The customer would have to go upstream and look at Fedora, or they'd have to download CentOS Stream and reverse engineer it to figure out what was coming. Going forward, we're going to capture all of this information in a digital roadmap that lets customers look at future versions of RHEL and see what's coming. They'll be able to learn about deprecations and additions to the operating system ahead of time. To make it even more useful, the roadmap will be customized to their specific RHEL fleet. Architects and system administrators will be able to look at a quick report and see the direct impact of all their systems registered in Insights. So, all of this information at your fingertips. One last shift left feature is package recommendations. With package recommendations, if you're building an image builder in our image builder tool in console.redhat.com, which is the Insights image builder tool, we can see what packages you're selecting and can recommend other relevant packages. This is just like shopping experience on Amazon. If you're looking at tents, you'll also get recommendations for sleeping bags and camp stoves. In this example, if you're installing Kerberos, we might suggest the Active Directory enrollment tool because our data tells us most people that select this package want this one too. It's a way of getting a system administrator or an architect or even a developer to a place where they're not missing a package and getting frustrated when that extra capability they want isn't there. We want to be that second set of eyes for the customer. RHEL 10 improves security practices within the DevSecOps framework by shifting security left and introducing an optimized process for deploying RHEL images during the build phase. This innovative approach, combined with image mode for RHEL, is enhancing the security architecture, promoting immutability, and reducing the attack surface. Users running identity management can save time and improve security by leveraging the domain join feature. This feature, accessed through Insights and the hybrid cloud console, enables a new feature that performs discovery and connects new systems back to your identity management domain. This provides a secure way of joining the new system to the domain while removing the need for stored credentials or keys inside your deployment images. So, definitely something that will make some of you happier. Now, I keep mentioning the Insights image builder. There's also the RHEL 10 image builder. So if you want to do these image builder things on premise, you can. And what we've done with the RHEL 10 image builder is it now provides a similar user interface that closely matches the features I've been talking about with Insight's image builder interface and feature set. So you'll be able to do all of that there. And just as a reminder, across both of them, we have expanded the formats, supporting public cloud, bare metal, virtual machines, and even Microsoft's Windows subsystem for Linux. We're also bringing some improvements to how you run RHEL in the public cloud, from RHEL images that are optimized for the cloud to better integrations with your cloud providers, command line interface tools, or monitoring and observability tools. We're working to make RHEL a more integrated workload in your cloud environment of choice. All right, so another one of the threats. Security is always important, but in RHEL 10, we're making some improvements to prepare you for some threats that may be years away with the developments around quantum computing. For those of you who aren't already aware, post-quantum cryptography is a major security threat looming on the horizon and refers to the ability to protect your information after powerful quantum computers become available to hackers. The concern is not about these criminals buying quantum computers at a local retailer, going down to Best Buy or something. It's more about nation states building their own. The risk is real, and the clock is, frankly, ticking. To give you some perspective, according to Forbes, a 2020 era computer would require 300 trillion years, yeah, trillion years, to break today's RSA 2048 encryption standard. A quantum computer will break it in 10 seconds. See, at Red Hat, we see this coming and we've invested heavily in preparing post-quantum cryptographic libraries and algorithms that are resistant to quantum computers so that you can prepare now for future compliance mandates. They are coming. So, what are we looking at here? Well, due to the large scope of change post-quantum cryptography will be for the market for both software and hardware, we anticipate that this will be a long hybrid transition period. We've identified 4 phases to this transition, starting with classical, which is where most people are today, traditional cryptography, no quantum resistant algorithms available. Next is PQ capable, which is where we are with RHEL 10. We are introducing some quantum resistant algorithms, and we are making it so that we will be ready when the standards are ultimately established. Because right now, this is not a mature standard. This is not something that's been specified, though we are starting to get a lot of warnings. The other thing you're finding is that we are internally reinvigorating that concept of secure by design. All the engineers at Red Hat build RHEL following our RHEL developer guide, and one of our core principles is to build secure by design. This means that when our engineers and architects are forced to make decisions, they will always choose to go with the secure default. If a customer wants to turn it off, that's fine, but we will always leave security features on by default. One that has always been sort of a fun thing to poke on the internet is the fact that we leave SE Linux on by default. And it's through SE Linux that containers are kept independent. Virtual machines are kept independent. We are using these features to keep the walls secure. Frankly, we are recommitting to this secure by design philosophy in RHEL 10. And we need to share this message loudly. There's a lot of vendors out there that really think of security as an afterthought. But for us, it's never an afterthought. This is an opportunity for us to share our philosophy with the world and ultimately why it matters. Now, there is currently no one global cryptographic authority. So many countries and compliance bodies rely on the National Institute of Standards and Technology, who create the cybersecurity framework, to publish final algorithms. But again, we're not there quite yet. But in the meantime, here is the current guidance from many of the world's compliance bodies. All right. I'm seeing a lot of encouraging transitions. They'll release formal guidelines later on. Maybe we'll meet up in the future. Now, one of the other challenges, though, is that every time we have a CVE related to something like OpenSSL, which is the source software language used to provide secure communications over networks, the remediation patch almost always requires a new FIPS validation certificate, which can take up to more than 300 days on average to obtain. This new feature enables the FIPS cryptographic standard to be validated separately so that going forward, any CVE fixes related to OpenSSL or other crypto libraries can be performed without the need to obtain a new FIPS validation certificate. The benefit here to the user is that they maintain compliance and can continue doing business with any federal organization here in the United States that requires FIPS compliance. So here is our second poll question for you. Quantum computers represent a threat to our encrypted traffic. Post-quantum cryptography is a mature standard included in FIPS for remediating that threat. Is this true or false?
Hey Rob, while the poll's up,
Yeah.
we did get a few really great questions in the chat, and I think you're welcome to kind of defer those until the last 5, 7 minutes or so, or we can hit them now, whichever works better for you. I've done my best to answer them, but I'm sure you'd have thoughts on at least a couple of them. So
Okay.
whatever works better for you.
You said in the chat.
Yes, and I've seen a couple. I can tee you up for a couple, and
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Why don't you tee me up a couple?
yeah, you ready? Yeah, sure, no problem. So one great question is around Lightspeed and whether it learns from prompts and any security drawbacks or considerations. I gave Jeremiah there an answer around the feature is relatively new and there's some growing that it will do. For now, it's calling an IBM Watson X backend to kind of help you out with those different features, and I think it'll continue to grow. But any other things you'd want to add on that would be
Yeah, it was really funny. I was talking to one of the product managers at Summit, and right after we introduced RHEL Lightspeed, a bunch of internal Red Hatters started asking RHEL Lightspeed a bunch of questions. And RHEL Lightspeed came back with a response which is functional, but not necessarily the best practice we would encourage folks to utilize. And so, we have internally in Red Hat this thing called memo list, where people can just sort of say what they feel and share it with the community at large. And so there was a lot of back and forths and that sort of stuff. And what this product manager told me, he said he will be writing some new knowledge base articles with the best practice for doing this.
there you go.
And we're ultimately feeding that into RHEL Lightspeed. So once he's written those articles, we've fed them in, we will get different recommendations from RHEL Lightspeed. But there is some versioning, issues that'll come in, like any AI. The hallucinations are real in some cases. So it is something that you want to take and interpret yourself.
For sure. And I think it's a relatively new feature. We're still working through it. No real localized steps yet, but
No.
keep an eye on the space. It's certainly something that you're not going to be the only one to ask there, Jeremiah. And the security considerations, of course,
Yeah.
whenever you're getting questions to a model that's not yours, you have to consider those as well. Obviously, we stand by the security of it, but your results may vary. So ask your Red Hat account team on how they can help you out there and make sure things are ticking tight.
Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and continue on here. So it looks like from the poll, most of you thought this was true. No, it is false. Post-quantum cryptography is not a mature standard included in FIPS at this stage. So this is an evolving thing that's coming. We're waiting for the standards to be defined. All we're getting is encouragement to start using some of these algorithms. But exactly which algorithms you need to use and that sort of stuff, we are waiting for those standards to ultimately be defined. So the answer to this one is, in fact, false. All right. So the last sort of market trend thing we want to take a look at is leveraging RHEL as a trusted platform for AI workloads. As you might imagine, RHEL is sort of the foundation for us for lots of things that we do. And RHEL plays a crucial role in RHEL AI to leverage new advances faster with safety and trust and with the support of our vast partner ecosystem. Um, in RHEL 10 specifically, we've added new capabilities such as image mode for streamlined deployment and updates using pre-configured container images. Confidential computing capabilities have been added that enable organizations to leverage their AI data in a secure and isolated manner. RHEL 10 includes the option to integrate with a Postgres vector database for improved accuracy of generative AI, and Model Context Protocol is planned, which is an open standard that enables AI models to seamlessly integrate with external data sources and tools. As part of implementing RHEL AI and doing your artificial intelligence, we need to continue to accelerate cloud adoption. So optimizing for efficiency in the cloud is a key sort of requirement for us. So RHEL AI, as I mentioned, these new capabilities, image mode, confidential computing, and integration with the Postgres vector database are all included. And the MCP capability is something we will be adding soon. The cloud optimized entities, again, we have these images, pre-tuned, ready to run images that you can deploy out to your favorite cloud provider. And it will work well within those environments. We're also integrating enhanced observability and reporting into that cloud provider's dashboard so you have a more unified view of your usage. We are increasing security from boot to runtime. So being able to provide things like top-down memory encryption and enhanced security at boot time. Integrated cloud management tooling and new deployment options. Frankly, the image mode thing that we looked at earlier, whether it's Insights image mode or RHEL image mode, using that container native tooling can allow folks to deploy those gold images in a more streamlined fashion into the cloud and contain that drift and reboot into whatever is needed. There are some other notable features we do want to make some mention of that were announced at the same time. One is the Red Hat Insights Advisor and Satellite that's now in tech preview for your self-hosted satellite users. We also announced Satellite 617. There's a new Red Hat Enterprise Linux Security Select add-on that provides organizations moderate and low CVE fixes. The RISC-V partnership with SI5 is in developer preview. And we have a new extensions repository and partner validation program for delivering better solutions for folks. And of course, we're now available in Microsoft Windows subsystem for Linux. We are now a validated software platform over there. So, some slides that go into some of the details for each of these additional elements. One of the keys, for example, for Satellite 617 is the support for RHEL 10, support for image mode, support for Flatpaks. Frankly, Flatpaks is the containerization of desktop applications, as opposed to what we've been doing in terms of application containers. The Security Select add-on, the RISC-V developer preview, the extensions repository, which is getting some high value packages accessible in a trusted Red Hat secure supply chain. We are validating our partners and support for the Windows subsystem for Linux. Here are some versions of packages that have been updated, and I should mention that the update of these versions happened with RHEL 10, but quietly in the background, we also introduced the point release to 9, which is RHEL 9.6, have these same versions available. Some things have also gone away, though. For example, support for certain CPUs. So if you have x86 64 CPUs that are 12, 15 years old, you may not be able to run RHEL 10 on those. The specific instruction set is called ISA version 3. For Intel, it's Haswell and later. For AMD, it's Excavator and later. But you may notice that both of those are from the early 2010s. So it's been a long time. And we'll warn you, though, that if you're using some Atom processors, there are some recent Atom processors which do not have the V3 instruction set. How do you determine? Well, you need to go in and look up the chart on Intel's website or AMD's website as to whether or not they have that instruction set. Also mentioned is that the 32-bit multi-lib support is gone in RHEL 10. So all of those i686 packages have been removed. If you have a 32-bit application that requires an i686 library, you're going to need to package those into an application service container to be able to deploy them on RHEL 10. We are not including these packages with RHEL 10. For those of you that use a graphical desktop like I do, Xorg has been removed. RHEL 10 is Wayland only. If you've been playing in Fedora, most of that's already happened to you. The other thing we found is VNC we couldn't maintain in a Wayland only world, and so VNC is no longer included in RHEL 10. For remote desktop, we are relying on RDP as the graphical desktop alternative. SCAP Workbench was based on an older version of GTK2, which was removed with Xorg, and SCAP Workbench has not been rewritten to function with Wayland, so we've had to remove that. For those of you that yelled at us for removing Tomcat, we took that to heart and we brought it back. So where we had removed it in RHEL 8, it initially returned in a minor release of RHEL 9, but it is now again here also in RHEL 10. Networking changes, ISC, DHCP. ISC themselves dropped the original DHCP server packages in favor of their own work on something they're calling Kia DHCP. So RHEL 10 has now been updated to support Kia DHCP, and the old ISC DHCP that's no longer being maintained has been removed. Also, IP tables, we did not actually remove it. It's still in a deprecated state, but warning, hurry up and get off of IP tables, and you need to be using NF tables instead, or frankly, just using the front-end tools, Firewall CMD or something like that. A reminder of the product life cycle. You do know that every 3 years now, we come out with a major new version. So after Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 came out, 3 years later, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9 came out, and now 3 years later, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10 came out. For each of those, we will support them in a full support mode for 5 years. During those 5 years, you will see the point releases being deployed about every 6 months. And so you will see a 10.1 about 6 months from now, a 10.2 about a year from now, and so on, ultimately to a 10.10 will be the final release in full support. This is where we're adding new hardware support. We're doing a lot more to it in full support. After that 5 years, you then have an additional 5 years of maintenance support. This is where we're only making critical fixes. We're not going to introduce any new versions of anything, any new updates, that sort of stuff. And for those people that can't get off after 10 years, we do have an additional 2+ years of an extended life phase. So having said that, you can see here where RHEL 10 is in its lifespan and where it is in terms of full support and maintenance support. You can also see where RHEL 7 is. So any of you still on RHEL 7, you are out in the extended life phase. And so that has something you really need to start migrating from. If you're on RHEL 6, you're on your own. All right. So here's our final poll question. Full support of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10 lasts for how long? Go ahead and pop that up for us. So A, is it 3 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 5 years? Or is it 12+ years? Aha. Excellent. Everybody seems to be chiming in with the correct answer, which is 5 years of full support. But ultimately, you will get 12+ years of support in general, but that will transition between full to maintenance to extended life. All right. So I would be remiss, since this is being sponsored by Red Hat Training and Certification, if I didn't start talking a little bit about some of the training things that we can do. And reality is, skilled people are the key to successful digital transformation. And so you need training in these features and such. You can reduce your risk exposures. Employees that go through structured training think and act differently. They are more structured and are better able to identify risk areas and opportunities for improvement, even outside our Red Hat environment. And this is from a report done by the Enterprise Strategy Group last year. We have multiple ways to fit different learning styles. If you like going to instructor-led training, we have open enrollment where you can just sign up based upon the public schedule. We can even do private group deliveries on site within your organization or virtually. We have self-paced access to our content in addition to our Netflix offering known as the Red Hat Learning Subscription, where you have access to all of our content for the period of a year. And then we can sort of marry in a hybrid fashion RHLS Premium, which gives you that full catalog self-paced, but also lets you sign up for pieces of courses in online half-day sessions delivered live by our instructors. I mention this because we have a new RHEL 10 course that we released with the release of RHEL 10. It's called New Features in Red Hat Enterprise Linux. It is SKU RH304. It premiered at Summit Power Training. Actually, I was the instructor for this. And I gave my students hands-on access to the new installer. We took a look at Flatpaks, which are those desktop application containers. We took a look at containers in general, the traditional application service containers. And we took a look at image mode, which is RHEL itself in a container. Gee, it seems to be all about containers now. And of course, we expose students to RHEL Lightspeed. But if you're looking to get some hands-on with this, this is a 2-day course. So it's not one of our traditional, week-long courses. You can get in and get out pretty quickly with this course. In fact, it's on the schedule. We are offering a virtual training June 16th and 17th. We have one in July and a couple in August. Dates have been established over the next few months. We are also in the process of establishing 3 in-person schedules, likely later in the summer, August, maybe into September. But those locations will be in Atlanta, Denver, and Reston. So if you're interested in signing up for any of these or so on, obviously you can reach out to Mariella. She can set you up for that. Red Hat Enterprise Linux is one platform with unlimited possibilities. And this I went over, but we'll switch over to Q&A. So, Wes, do you want to tee up a couple of others?
Yeah, for those that are, I think we still got some folks here that were asked some questions, so I think we can kind of get to those. Got a few questions around RHEL as it relates to different cloud providers and its consistency. So how RHEL can handle differences in telemetry patching and observability across AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. Feel free to chime in on that one and we'll move to the
Yeah.
next.
So there are different package sets for each of the cloud providers to be able to integrate into their APIs and have access to the information and such. And one of the beauties of Image Builder is that you'll be able to go in and configure it for whichever one you want to be able to pull in. I think of it much like the what is it? Was it Open VM Tools? I think was the name of the package I used to install all the time for deploying my RHEL images on top of VMware to be able to get exposure of that information into that. So we're doing the same sort of thing with each of those cloud providers.
Very nice. Another one from the same person. How does the new image mode in RHEL 10 compare to traditional provisioning methods in terms of system recovery and rollback, especially in large scale deployments? Radically different. Think developer lifecycle versus operating system lifecycle is kind of the answer I gave, but feel free to kind of give some more insights there.
Yeah, I love that phrase, developer life cycle versus traditional sysadmin life cycle. It really is just a function of rebooting. We deliver the image and you're sitting there, in a traditional grub menu, almost where you can see the new image and the old image. And so if you need to reboot, you can pick between the images that you want to go to, or you can remotely control boot C to go ahead and boot whichever image you want it to work with. But it's all about the reboot. Much like your cell phone. Think in terms of like implementing it on the cell phone.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus one to all that. And last one we're seeing in the chat with Red Hat Insights Advisor now available in satellite in the direction of RHEL 10 on risk-v. How does Red Hat plan to ensure consistent performance and support across such diverse platforms and deployment models, especially in hybrid cloud environments? I would say, just to chime in for me before Rob jumps in there, Red Hat is here to kind of support customers across a wide variety of different deployments with different products in complex architectures. We've got folks in engineering, folks in our business units, our services comrades out there that are all helping customers kind of execute on this, and our product teams are kind of backing that up as well. So I would just say, from Red Hat point of view, we're all in from an engineering side, and so that's what we're here to do. But Rob, feel free to kind of add, subtract, or kind of comment there.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's so much like satellite would have to connect back into our environment to obtain the latest packages and stuff for ultimately deployment to your disconnected world. It's going to do the same thing with the Insights Advisor that's in satellite. Need to be able to pull in, that latest content from the source. Um, in terms of working with RISC-V and that sort of stuff, yeah, as we go between different architectures that we're putting stuff on, it's a matter of you building those images. And I really believe that the consistency of this is based upon the use of image mode. It fundamentally changes the way we think about deployment. For an old school guy like me that's been doing Unix and Linux for long time. You can see the gray hair. It's just I need to start thinking differently. It's a different way of doing things. And so where I've had these long convoluted Kickstart files of installing in this big packages section, now I can deploy out in hardware, Pixie booting if I want, these image modes just by replacing that packages section in the Kickstart with the image that we want to obtain. And that gets it kicked off. And then we can go ahead and push updates, declare. We can even have the systems automatically pulling the latest update going from the container registry. You've got your secure supply chain that you're building into that container registry to help protect your environment. So the tool chain is becoming much more developer focused. And so we as sysadmins have to sort of really join into that world and be thinking in terms of infrastructure as code. All right. So I think we'll wrap it with that question. I see that Mariella put a link in the chat of where you can get additional information on finding training around Red Hat, a link to that. But I want to thank you for that, and I'll just turn it back to Mariella to close us out.
Absolutely, Rob. Thank you both so much for your amazing insight today. And thank you, Rob, for your awesome presentation. I went ahead and dropped that link in the chat. And if you have any other questions or want to take a peek around New Horizons, please do not be afraid to visit us at newhorizons.com. Or that link I dropped in the chat. So thank you all so much for joining. We'll be sharing a recording of this session with all of you in an email after the webinar. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks again, Rob and Wes.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.